China's top diplomat Wang Yi's visit to the U.S. ended with a promise from both countries to make a BidenXi summit happen at the APEC summit next month. Now, will the meetup reboot thorny Washington-Beijing relations? For more, we're joined by Jeff Min this morning. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
The road to make that summit come true may not be so smooth. Now, Wang Yi said himself that autopilot should not be relied on to achieve that summit to make it come true. Now, what does that mean?
Wang's comments are a recognition of the fact that despite high-level desire to improve relations, the U.S. and China face very difficult issues, and there have been setbacks. For example, the spy balloon incident was an unanticipated mini-crisis that stalled diplomatic process for several months. Right now, there are a half a dozen different issues that could develop unpredictably and generate friction. There are international issues like the Middle East, the South China Seas, Ukraine, bilateral issues like tariffs, export controls, and China's reckless flying behavior in the Taiwan Straits, and even domestic issues like the U.S. elections and China's faltering economy. So all of these issues need to be managed carefully between now and any summit meeting, and that's why Wang Yi is cautioning that the U.S.-China relationship is not on autopilot at this point.
Sure, a wide range of security, economic, and even domestic issues may get in the way before that summit actually takes place. Now, what does Wang's mention of the Bali meeting signify then?
Well, the events leading to this potential summit date back to August of 2022, when then U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited China. China claimed that visit violated its One China principle, and it cut off all bilateral dialogues. In November of 2022, Presidents Biden and Xi met at a G20 meeting in Bali, and they decided there to take steps to stabilize relations. That decision led to a series of high-level visits between the countries to better understand positions on issues, with the hope of an eventual summit meeting between the presidents at the November APEC meeting in San Francisco. So it's widely assumed that at the top of Wang Yi's agenda during his recent Washington visit was tacit agreement, even though there's no announcement for the summit to occur, and plans for specific areas of agreement for the leaders to discuss and then perhaps announce publicly.
Would you still say the agreement on working on that summit is still a big step made between the two sides? What do you think?
Both American and Chinese observers have said that U.S.-China relations have sunk to their lowest level since the 1970s. So from that perspective, restarting the relationship is a big step. In addition, all of the major problems in the world involve the U.S. and China in one way or another, and their cooperation is really essential in terms of achieving outcomes. So, for example, cooperation between the two countries could significantly improve the global response to climate change and pandemics. So improving U.S.-China relations is not only a big step, but it's a necessary step for purposes of enhancing global peace and prosperity.
Sure, Washington and Beijing indeed have come a long way, but is it fair to say the Biden-Xi summit will actually be a turning point for defrosting their tensions?
I think that the anticipated summit could be a turning point in relations, but we shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking that the relationship is going to return to the status quo. China has spent the last year issuing policy statements outlining its vision for a world that is separate and distinct from the democratic, rules-based, market-governed world that China pretended to want to join for the first 30 years of the U.S.-China relationship. China recently announced global government initiatives, which include initiatives in the areas of security, development, and even civilization. And this vision defines an alternative world order. The Chinese vision is an authoritarian world with a state-run economy and mercantilist trade policies. That vision is fundamentally different from the Western vision, and I think that China's new aggressiveness in pressing that agenda internationally is probably a recipe for more friction in the future.
Right, and South Korea is also closely following the developments between the two countries. And what will that soften U.S.-China relations mean for South Korea, actually? Is there anything good or beneficial for Seoul in the near future?
any improvement in U.S.-China relations can only be beneficial for South Korea. In fact, I can't think of any downside. For example, South Korea's top priority is managing the ongoing threat from North Korea. China is one of the very few countries that has friendly relations with North Korea, so China can perhaps facilitate useful communications and help moderate North Korean behavior. South Korea will also benefit from U.S.-China cooperation addressing transnational threats like climate change. And then in the economic realm, improved U.S.-China relations might also facilitate positive trade relations between South Korea and China. China has in the past launched punishing boycotts against South Korea, but better U.S.-China relations along with close U.S.-South Korea policy coordination could moderate Chinese aggressiveness.
Indeed. All right. Thank you so much for your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.